Hi. So, welcome. I'm glad to see you. We are on lesson number 2 of Powerless, and exercises 1 and 2 have been presented. Today, I have some information to share with you on exercise number 1, which was a written exercise for reflective contemplation, which would definitely involve some rigorous honesty. Maverick put some stuff out the other day about this. Please do pop over to his channel and make sure you keep up with the class through him. He's the one leading this. I'm just kind of coming up with my own input as I go through the class, just things that I'm finding common and sharing some thoughts on that. So what I will talk about is things where I have observed or read of commonality amongst the variety of channels that I follow, where I've seen comments that are similar to things I myself am dealing with. So anything that I have noted in my own work that is pretty much specific to me, and I haven't seen a lot of other things about it in comments, I'm going to leave that out. I'm only going to speak on things that are where I've seen other people comment or ask questions or mention it, so that we're all on the same page. I don't need to bring up anything that's not relevant to all of us. So the written exercise for number 1 was the question that we are contemplating is, how has my pride prevented me from asking for and getting the help I needed to overcome hurts, hang-ups, and habits? That was pretty complex. It was really much larger than I thought it would be. And when I was honest with myself, there came a lot of information around that one that is common between not just myself, but other people. On the surface, on the surface, my pride has convinced me that there wasn't anything wrong with me. It was everyone else around me that had a problem. I was the only one that was sane. I was the only one that made sense. Everybody else was confused. They didn't get it. They didn't understand me. I was right. They were wrong. It was always me. I didn't even bother to inquire what my role or part would have been in any of my challenges. It was always somebody else's fault. So each time there was a challenge with my job, it was someone else's fault, responsibility, or problem. It wasn't mine. I would participate in the resolution and carry out the corrective actions, but I would not accept any responsibility for any role I had in the creation of that challenge. Now, mind you, that is past tense. That is no longer a current part of my paradigm in my work, but there was a time in my life that there was. And when that was happening, pride was saying, it wasn't my fault, but I'll go ahead and fix that for you. And ego was saying, I own this job, I don't make mistakes. So with those two things running in my ear, I couldn't possibly perceive myself as being wrong. Of course, I know now I was wrong, but then I didn't. So in my work, that did cause some problems in the past that I was not able to see until I got healthier and had some very real and authentic conversations with people that I had spent time with in workforce. In my marriage, pride prevented me from seeking any help or guidance to help us because everything was always his fault because of his mental illness. I had my own challenges, but his was a big, huge one. And though there were some very real, authentic challenges around that, not everything was always his fault. He's passed, so I'm not able to tell him to his face that I acknowledge my part in the dissolution of our marriage, but I now do. I use it as an excuse to minimize what he said and did, both to the good and the bad, in most areas. When he was behaving contrarily in public with strangers, it was an excuse for his behavior choices. When we were disagreeing, it was my reasoning why he was wrong and I wasn't. When it came to finances, it was my excuse to blame him for the depleted assets and the constant financial devastation without accepting any of my role in depleting resources. When it came to housing instability, it was my excuse for constantly moving, sometimes 2 and 3 times a year, without accepting my role in using wandering as an escape strategy. My pride blamed him. It was his fault. Everything was his fault. When it came to employment instability, it was my excuse for changing jobs often, citing the stress and duress in the home and blaming him solely. When it came to marital celibacy, it was my reason that he had no intimate desires without acknowledging that I didn't take care of myself physically or emotionally. I treated him emotionally unkindly, and I acted unlovingly, and I was unsupportive for the last few years of our marriage. Neither of us cheated, but there was no, and there was no love there, and I didn't own my role in that. It was my excuse in my world for maintaining a separation from my family and friends without accepting my own desire for isolation due to depression and PTSD. I just blamed it on him instead of taking any responsibility for any of my own part. Pride said, we're fine. All couples live like this. My folks did, my grandparents did, his brother does. It's normal. We're fine, and we'll get by. Ego said, he's being totally crazy, and nobody but me is ever going to put up with this mess. He's lucky to have me. Without me, he'd be homeless, with nothing, and he needs to appreciate that and act right. That was ego. Neither of those were going to put us in a position to get any kind of help that we would have needed to try and build any kind of a normal marriage, because there was nothing about our marriage that was healthy. So pride and ego have played a large part in that. So in my interactions with my parents, pride prevented us from having a relationship of equal balance because I blamed all of my deficiencies and problems on my childhood and my parents, and I wouldn't accept any responsibility for the relational challenges based upon my behaviors, my decisions, my words, and my treatment of them. It was always their own fault. So pride was saying, I don't care if we have any kind of a positive relationship. Anyway, I've done just fine without it this long. Ego was said, after all that they put me through, they should just be happy that I even speak to them at all, much less love them, because they've got it coming. Both of those have prevented any kind of positive relationship building there. We've gotten past that, but there was a time that's where we were at. So it's pretty all-encompassing, I found. In being real, I found it was in many layers of aspects of my life. And there's some where it's current. Like, for example, there's some of us right now, I've noticed in some of the comments, that, we're single and we live that way. And we tell ourselves that we're happy, but really, are we content that way? Pride has convinced me that I'm perfectly content at the thought of spending the remainder of my life single and alone. And that's where I was until I had to write this out. Interesting, isn't it? So believing this lie, I don't have to admit to myself that I don't know how to see a healthy relationship in my life. I don't have to face that. In believing this, I don't have to admit that I'm afraid. Nobody wants to admit that. In believing that pride lie, I don't have to admit that I'm unsure how to share my life without becoming invisible in it. And I can't ever let that happen again. But I don't have any experience in avoiding it. In believing that lie, I don't have to admit that I don't know what good or healthy or balanced is in a relationship or how to find it. By believing that prideful lie, I don't have to learn how to talk and openly communicate about uncomfortable or contrary situations. It's easier just to lie to myself and say, I'm happy this way, it's perfect. In believing that lie, I don't have to deal with relational conflict. Nobody likes to deal with conflict, and I prefer to avoid it. Most people do. I don't know relationships without conflict. I've heard they exist, but I'm not familiar with those. In believing that lie, I don't have to live under the expectation of sex. I don't have anything against it. I just don't like the expectation of it. And I haven't found that relationships to be without that. And it's much easier to avoid it than fight about it. In believing that lie, I don't have to learn intimacy or learn how to share my living space. In believing that prideful lie, I don't have to be accountable to another person. No checking in or stating where I'm going or when I'll be back. I'm not stuck somewhere, unable to wander off when I become restless. In believing that lie, I don't have to share or expose my life and decisions that I've made, things I've done, and stuff I've experienced to another being who has power over my heart. That exposes me to their opinions, their judgments, and their criticisms of my past, my present, and my future. And it makes me vulnerable to their attitudes and responses about my past. I had to write down for the first time and acknowledge that my past greatly drives my future, especially in relationships. People aren't understanding of some of the things that I've been exposed to and endured in my life, and they don't understand. And I don't really have the tolerance or patience to try and help them get there. And that's actually honest to me. And then I wrote down that it bothers me that I had to write that down. But it's true, and it's got to be dealt with. So in believing that lie, that prideful lie, I don't have to heal my heart when they get tired of me and flee. I don't have to introduce them to my family and hear the associated criticism and judgment about them and my choices. I don't have to learn how to handle their baggage and family issues, because really I don't know if I know how to care. Pride says that relationships make me messy and I'm perfectly content alone and dependent only upon myself and Father. Which is partially true. Mostly partially true. Ego says they can't handle me anyway, and that's the way it should be. Both of those are prideful lies, but I had to come to terms with that as I wrote this out. In this class, pride has slowed my purpose by convincing me that I'm already healed and that I'm only participating to benefit my professional practice. Another one that's current to this moment. In believing that lie, I don't have to admit that I didn't fully engage in my own healing and education prior to this experience. In believing that lie, I don't have to accept current areas in my life requiring healing and attention and heal them. In believing that lie, I don't have to share this personal stuff about my life with general public and anonymous strangers because I'm no longer that person and I don't want to talk about her or acknowledge that she ever existed or admit that she was me. But I was wrong. So pride says that I don't need this class, that I live in recovery and I'm doing this for Father because I'm fixed. Ego says that I'm not broken. They're broken and I'm helping them heal me because I'm fine. So I don't know about you, but I found that particular written exercise to be illuminating and beneficial. But it brought forward some questions to me about what does pride have to do with powerlessness? Because it's the chapter, lesson on powerless, and right out the gate we're talking about pride, right? So pride is the quality of having an excessively high opinion of oneself or of one's importance. So when one thinks that they're important or has an exceptionally high opinion of themselves, they have a perception that they have power in the world because they're important and they matter, okay? That makes sense. Powerless is without ability, influence, or power, so unimportant. So they seem kind of opposite. One is based on importance and the other is based on unimportance. So their perceptions of imbalance. So pride can enhance powerlessness through the misperception of importance where there is none. A lack of perceived importance is directly correlated to powerlessness in this world because importance is perceived as enhanced value or power. So I can kind of understand now. I know, not kind of, I do understand now how those two connect. So this exercise has been very challenging, and it's taken me quite a long time to write through it and get it done. But when I write, I'm very thorough. So question number 2 for this lesson is, what in my past has caused me to have the if-onlys? For example, if only I had stopped blank years ago. Or if only blank hadn't left me. Something along those lines. What in your past has caused you to have the if-onlys? That one's going to be interesting also. And we still have a list of words that Maverick reviewed in the preview of Lesson 2. So I'm still working on my personal definitions for those words, and if they come of importance, I will share those with you. So I hope you have a great Saturday, and thank you for your time. Have a great day.